Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. This was a picture from my back garden last week. This morning, it looked rather more suitable for planting rice, so how things change. Just down the arrow key, is it? Yeah, okay. Right, let's start with the moon. Full moon was last weekend, so that means we're coming up to last quarter this coming weekend. So we have a new moon on the 10th of February and a new moon again on the 11th of March. So last quarter moon is on February the 3rd, okay, this weekend, rising around about midnight, just after midnight. Now, I'm not a lunar observer at all, as most of you here will know, but I do like looking at either the first quarter moon or the last quarter moon, because it's got such wonderful, wonderful things to look at. All this structure along here is really superb, and I must say I prefer the last quarter moon because it means you can do some real observing before the moon actually comes up and interferes. So that's this weekend. We don't often see images of a full moon, and I rather like this. This is by David Arditi. It's one day after full. I don't know whether you can see all the details at the bottom here, but he does actually, this is how he obtained this image. And when I look at what he's done here, most of which means virtually nothing to me, I think, isn't it simple to be a visual observer, isn't it really? But that's, I think, quite a stunning full moon image by David. Many of you will see this page in the handbook every year, Lunar Occultations. I've highlighted one, number 2 here, because what you'll see is that it passes to the east and to the north of London. And I guess many people here tonight are probably going to be perhaps associated with societies that are in this area. I don't know whether any of you here have looked or done a grazing lunar occultation. Essentially what you do is you get a group of people, you spread out at right angles across the track. In the days when I done 1 or 2 of them, used to plot it on an Ordnance Survey map. I guess that things have moved on since then. And what you want to do is to try and find a place where the track goes close to a nice friendly pub. You go into the pub and you combine that with doing a graze occultation. I did hear of one group who actually got so carried away in the pub that when they looked at their watches they found that the graze had finished. But that's unfortunately with this one it takes place at 2:30 in the morning, so you'll have to find a very friendly landlord, I think, to sustain you. But if you're interested in doing this, you can get the graze details from out of the handbook, see the lunar circulars, or contact the Sheridan, who's the director of the computer section. And I can recommend it if you've never done it. It's really quite an interesting, fun exercise for a group of people. Moving on to the sun would appear to be staying, well, I won't say very active, but reasonably active. 2012, there were no spotless days. I know we've only been going a few weeks, but still there are no spotless weekdays, so we are hopeful that the sun is really picking up at last. Quite a stunning image by Dave Tyler here. We're getting used, I mean, I think a few years ago if we'd seen something like that we would have just said how incredible it was, and it still is incredible, but you tend to take them for granted now. We see so many of them, but they really are superb. And also, don't forget, have a look at things like NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory website, because that's got really stunning images on it. But I think there is a slight worry that I have here, that newcomers coming into our hobby see images like this and they think if they can't produce these sort of images, there's nothing that they can do. And nothing could be further from the truth, because something like either a white life or an H-alpha sketch is still really the backbone of the solar section, because it keeps the history going. We've been doing this since we were formed. And all you need is a 60mm refractor, a homemade light projection box, and you can still do very useful solar work. So you don't have to do these or make these stunning images to actually do anything useful. And I think that's something that we have to try and get across to newcomers. And I think it's true certainly in the deep sky. I find lots of people who send me images or want to join the section, and they say, really can't do an image of this quality. And I say, well, don't worry, you don't have to. You know, there are other things you can do. Anyway, as I said, the sun is sort of starting to warm up. This has been one of the biggest spots recently, 1654. It has now disappeared. But it's worth keeping an eye on the sun or looking at spaceweather.com to see what was actually happening. Because with the sun being active, we're likely to see this. And this is from Elgin, okay? Elgin, north of Scotland, just a bit north of Aberdeen. And really quite a stunning aurora. And I'm hopeful that it will carry on next week, because I'm off to northern Finland to try and see some, so fingers crossed for that. Meteor showers. Well, the quadrantids, certainly for me, were rained off or clouded out. Certainly didn't see a single quadrantid. I don't know whether anyone here was luckier. But this is rather a lean time for meteor showers. We have the Virginids coming up in April, and that's going to be quite good because the moon is only 1 day old there. But then for the Lyrids, the moon is 12 days old, so that's not so good. Of course, there's always a possibility that you can see sporadic meteors or a fireball at any time. But again, this time of the year, there are not so many sporadic meteors around. So meteors, a bit of a dull time, but they will pick up again as we go through the year. Let's move on to the planets. Mercury is putting on quite a reasonable show in the west at just after sunset. This is the view on February the 1st, which is in a couple of days' time, this weekend. So the sun's setting at 1644, and this is at 15 minutes later, and you can see that Mercury is a few degrees above the horizon, and a couple of weeks later it's got even better. Greatest eastern elongation is on February the 16th at 18 degrees, and so this is now what, three quarters of an hour after sunset, and there is Mercury quite a reasonable distance above the horizon. So an ideal opportunity to spot Mercury, and its phase is what? So it's a sort of dichotomy, really, roughly 51% phase. Moving on to Venus. This is Venus. I guess it could equally well be an Essex girl in Chelmsford on a Saturday night, but that's Venus. You don't agree, Nick? Venus is not doing too well at the moment, is Venus. Basically it's rising just a few minutes before the sun and it's setting mid-afternoon. So solar conjunctions on March the 28th. But if you've never looked at Venus during the daytime, this is an ideal opportunity to try. It really is quite easy. I guess many people here go to telescopes, so will have no problems. I don't. I always offset from the sun. So if you're going to do that, then you do obviously need to take all the right precautions to avoid yourself staring at the sun with your telescope, the sun protected. But it's quite nice to pick up Venus in the daytime, and I observed Jupiter in the daytime towards the end of last year, and I was amazed at just how much detail I could see on it at midday. It's really quite a nice object to look at. Where other planets fail, you can usually rely on Jupiter to come up trumps. Planet of the month, it's large, it's bright, it's high up, and it's also visible at a reasonable time in the early evening. Incidentally, that image of Jupiter there, you feel it's got a certain resemblance to our president. I mean, do you have the blood of gods coursing through your veins, Bill?
I've got no blood coursing through my veins.
Anyway, Jupiter's putting on a good show. This is from, in fact, all the altitudes, etc., that I quote are from the astronomical mecca of Thorpe-the-Soken. But you can see that in early evening it's transiting, so really is quite a nice time to look at it. It's high up in Taurus, so there's Jupiter there, Pleiades there, Hyades there. And of course, if you want to get excited, the Crab Nebula is just about there. But that is Jupiter, really nice and high up and large diameter. The Great Red Spot is always a nice thing to look at, but it's got a companion now, oval BA there, or what has really become known as the Little Red Spot recently. It's transits around 38 minutes before the Great Red Spot, transiting, okay, this preceding side there, so it's moving in that direction. And it's really quite an obvious little visual spot to look at now, really quite nice. And the suitable transit times for the Great Red Spots in February are shown here. So some nice sort of early evening times when you can see the Great Red Spots on the meridian. That's based on System 2, a longitude of 189 degrees. This does change, so if you look at something like Sky and Telescope website, for example, and just put in your position and your time, it'll tell you when it's transiting. John Rogers sent me this compilation last week, and I put it up really just to show you the amount of detail that's now active on the southern and the northern equatorial belts. You'll see many BAA observers here, for example, Martin Mobley. There was a time when you used to look at a Damien Peach image and everyone else's sort of just didn't compare. Now it's amazing the number of people who really are producing stunning images of Jupiter. So it just shows you the sort of detail that is visible, and on most of that detail is visible with care and quite a, certainly an 8-inch telescope you'll see an awful lot of that sort of structure. Saturn, well, Saturn is rising now before midnight, but it's certainly not at the altitude that Jupiter is. February the 1st it rises just around midnight, transiting at 5 o'clock in the morning, so it is an early morning object. Now that's not such a bad thing, providing you don't mind getting up early in the morning, because I often find, and I think most people will find, that the seeing conditions are a lot better in the early morning than they are in the evening. Things that are releasing heat have got rid of all their heat, and generally you get a much better view. And that, of course, is very important for something that's as low as Saturn is at the moment. Half the size of Jupiter, just 17 arc seconds, and half a magnitude. And I think we'll make a nice contrast in the morning sky. There's Saturn there, and there's first magnitude Spica nearby in Virgo. So a nice little two objects there to compare to each other. The rings are wide open. Well, not wide open, but very open, so you get actually a rather nice view, and I think that is still my favourite astronomical object, and I guess it's probably many people's favourite astronomical object. There's nothing quite like seeing Saturn back in the sky again, I think. Asteroids, well, asteroids quite exciting this time, because we've got 2012 DA4. Many of you who subscribe to the BAE circulars will have had a circular last week telling us that this was going to happen on, what's the date? Can't even see it up there. Friday, okay, Friday next week. Yes, it's, yeah, okay, Friday next week. But the important thing here, or the interesting thing is, I mean, looking on this graph here, you'll see that this is the path of the asteroids. It's actually coming inside the belt of geostationary satellites. It just gives you a feel for how close it is. There's the moon's orbit out there. And it is said that this is going to be the closest recorded approach of any asteroid during the time that we've actually been, about the last 40 years that we've been recording these things. So Don Yeoman says that this sort of happens about every 40 years, but we only get a collision about once every 10,000 years. So, but just to give you a feel for the size of this object, this is its path there. To give you a feel for the size of the object, it's about the size of the impactor that created the Arizona meteor crater. So it just gives you a feel for the sort of impact that we could have if it was actually to hit the Earth. This is the chart that Richard Miles sent out. You can see just how fast it is moving. And what I've done here is just sketched some lines in on the plough asterism here, because this can be, everyone I'm sure recognises this. And these two stars here are 5 degrees apart. These are typically what, sort of 10, 15-minute tick marks here. It just gives you a feel for how fast this object's actually moving. So with a pair of sort of 10 by 50 binoculars where you can put both these two stars in the field, you should be able to watch this object actually move through the field of the binocular view in a period of about 10 minutes. So this is something that will be really, really interesting to observe, and I think almost guarantees that it will be cloudy. But never mind. Certainly worth a try. We also have two other slightly more mundane asteroids that are making a good appearance. We've got Vesta and Ceres up there, and if you look at Ceres, well, I'll show you the track of both of them. This is the track from February to mid-March, and what you can see with Ceres is actually moving extremely close to El Nath, which is that star up there, and in fact it goes within half a degree of El Nath. So we have that star, which is magnitude 1.7, and we've got an asteroid that is about sort of 8th magnitude, and the two should be easily visible, and you should be able to follow the two moving through the eyepiece or through your field of your camera. So again, a really nice photographic opportunity there. I can't miss variable stars, so I thought I'd... have you heard of this one, Jeremy? I just thought I'd better put up some times of the minimum of Algol. Again, these are just times when it's easy to observe, when Algol's at its minimum during February. So, you know, 10 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night, a nice time if you've never looked at this star. Comets, well, this is where it really gets interesting. K5 Linear has put on a really good show over the last month or so, but surprisingly it hasn't caught the attention of, well, certainly hasn't caught the public attention. There's been no sort of, I haven't seen anything in the popular media about it, but it's really been quite a nice object, easily visible in a small telescope, but it seems to have passed people by. I mean, it suddenly sort of brightened and there it was. But I think the big interesting thing is that is this the next great daylight comet, S1 ISON. Well, I never believe in great daylight comets until they actually appear, so I think we'll have to keep our fingers crossed for this one. It's been over 100 years since we last had a daylight comet, 1910. But this is an image on January the 8th. So comets can do anything between now and the end of the year, but if it does brighten, I think it will be a reasonable comet. I would love it to be a daylight comet, but I must admit I have my doubts. But more immediately we have L4 Pan-STARRS, this comet here. This is the discovery image for it. Now, when it was discovered, all sorts of predictions were made. 2011, it's going to be -5. Even last October, people were saying -4. Early January this year, it was, well, +1. The latest, I think, on the Comet Section website when I looked was it could reach +2. But I had an email from Nick James, or who had an email from Dennis Brzezinski last night to say that it has brightened by about half a magnitude. So if it is going to turn out good, then it could be a reasonable comet. But I'm sure if it is, then there'll be many circulars sent out about it. But that's something to look forward to in March. What we're talking about. And there's a chart from the latest BAA journal that Nick provided, and you can see the comet moving up through there. If it's not a particularly bright object, bear in mind that the Andromeda Galaxy is there, so don't go confusing the comet with the Andromeda Galaxy. And if you're wondering what Pan-STARRS stands for, well, that's what it does stand for, and that's the telescope there on Hawaii. Okay, let's move on to the deep sky. Okay, look, M15 by Damien Peach. Now, we've all seen pictures of Jupiter, Saturn, etc., by Damien, but I'm pleased to say that after many years of imaging the planets, he's finally seen the error of his ways and he's moved on to the deep sky. So, but joking apart, that is a stunning image. What is it about Damien that allows him to actually get images like that? I don't know, but that's an image of M15 by Damien. There are not many things that move in the deep sky or change their appearance or do anything really in the deep sky. It tends to be rather fixed. But one class of object that does change are the variable nebulae. And there are a lot of them, and they're all visible at the moment. We've got Hines in Taurus, we've got Hubbles in Monoceros, we've got McNeil's in Orion, and we've got Gubbadagans in Cepheus. They are all around. Hubble's is very easy. It's visible in quite a small telescope, and it changes quite regularly, and so it's a nice thing to start off with if you're interested in this line of work. But the BAA Deep Sky section has a program to monitor Gubbadagans at the moment. David Boyd has done quite a lot of imaging of it, and I think Nick showed some pictures last Sky Notes. The problem with it is you look at it for a couple of months and you think you can see the relationship between the variability of the star and the brightness of the nebula, and then you do some more results and you find, oh no, it's changed now. So this is the problem of having too much data. You know, you never have too much data if you want to get a good story. But anyway, these objects are all on display at the moment, and these are some images that Mike Harlow did in just a couple of weeks ago. So if you're interested in getting involved in this bit of work, do contact myself or Grant Privet, who's running this for the Deep Sky section. But it's the one class of deep sky object that does actually change. Let's just have a look at a few other things in the sky. When Orion's around, I think most people point the telescopes at Orion and tend to forget that there are other constellations there. Gemini, for example. Gemini often gets ignored. It's a lovely little constellation. It's high up and it's got some beautiful objects in it. Now, if you say open cluster and Gemini, to most people they'll say M35. But there are actually some nice other clusters here. NGC 2266 and 2420, this drawing by Peter Grego there, who again normally looks at the moon but realises there are other things to do as well. So two very nice clusters. Don't just look at M35, have a go at these because they really are quite spectacular. Same thing is true of planetary nebulae. You think of Gemini and you think the Eskimo Nebula. Well, there are other planetaries there as well. This is 2371, 2372. It's got two NGC numbers because when William Herschel discovered it, he could see the two components to it. He obviously couldn't see that they were joined together in his telescope, so it eventually ended up with two NGC numbers. But it's a beautiful planetary with a lot of structure in it. There's a Nick Hewitt image there and a Fred Stevenson image there, and you can see there's an awful lot of detail to be seen in that. And it's suddenly become quite popular because then the following day Nick James sent me an image of it as well, so there's Nick's image. So a very nice planetary nebula in Gemini. Also Abell 21. It's often called the Medusa Nebula because the sort of banded structure that you can see there is said to be sort of has a good resemblance to the hair of Medusa, which was sort of writhing serpents. So that's Abell 21, another little planetary that's more tricky to pick up, but it's actually quite a nice object. So there we are, quite a few objects to see in the deep sky over the next few weeks. I hope we get clear skies. Good observing, and let's all keep our fingers crossed for a great daylight comet at the end of the year. Thank you very much.